been managing grant management, portfolio management, you've been looking at measurement and measurement right from grant proposal stage to project completion stage. And if I were just to ask you in terms of what are the three big things which you think organizations should be addressing, non-profit organizations. I don't want to use the word challenge all the time, or what are they not doing right? Because it just presents a very negative connotation to their efforts. But let's just say, what are the three main considerations that you believe that organizations should be paying attention to? And I'm weighing in on you more as somebody who's sitting on the giving side of things. Over to you, Atul.
Thanks, Vijay. I think you have set the bar very high for me today. So I'll try to do justice as much as possible. I think when I so I'll draw on my experience of working as an M&E person in the past for a significant time, and now sitting on the other side of the table, as you said. I think what I always feel is that there are organizations who really put a good thought in terms of when they design the program for really looking at how they want to look at the program in terms of monitoring it or evaluating the program in terms of its outcome that they want to achieve. And then they put a lot of premium on doing it right at the planning stage, right? Somewhere I also find that this is one piece which is very, very weak in some proposals, but that I wouldn't say it is only the what it's the only issue that that is the organization is responsible for. Sometimes they being cash strapped, not having skilled resources available, also translate into these pieces being weak in a proposal. I think the other thing is where you find that the research slide which earlier Aditya and Anusha shared with us. I think the bottom 5 and 6% were the organizations who had got the things right. Right? If you see, because those are the organizations who have not only put in efforts into setting the right measurement plans for themselves, but they have also put in efforts in using that information. I think in today's world, there are only two things, which initiates greed: money and data, probably. So I think what happens is when people start thinking about it, and one, as the technology is more and more accessible, what happens is people try to, compress everything together. Let us do whatever we can with technology, and that really doesn't serve the purpose when it comes to addressing challenges or doing things right. That also is one place where things go wrong. Right? We try to try to capture everything, but not really thinking how I'm going to use this one data point that I'm looking at capturing it. Right? See, with technology, simple Google Forms will enable you to capture individual level data.
Absolutely.
But does my program need it? Some get it right, some don't get it right. So the effort goes into gathering individual level data so much that you don't end up using even 10% of it. And that translates into another problem, that the field team don't see what happens to their data. I think no matter what you collect, it's very important. It's rather, I would say, equally important that you process that information and share it back with team, right? It sometimes is very important in terms of even as we every day look into mirror. That's a mirror, right? The data is a mirror for us. We can look into it and understand what we have been doing. Are we doing it right? Are we doing it wrong? Right? And it also helps us to understand, is it, am I capturing my hard work? I, as an M&E professional, always feel that, there is, the M&E person doesn't generate data in his pockets, right?
Yeah.
But is entrusted with the most important responsibility to ensure that, that they showcase the hard work of entire program, entire organization to the rest of the world,
Hmm.
right? And if you get it right, the 5 and 6% in the chart earlier, and there were some very important points which one earlier slide also shared. What are the internal challenges in terms of use of data and capturing information? I think those who are able to address it, succeed in that mission. And when there is a challenge at that level, then there is a lot of struggle.
All right. Thank you, Atul. Ashutosh, I'm just going to come quickly to you. One of the things which you said has stuck in my memory forever, and honestly, I've started borrowing that. I've been using that line. So I stole your line when you said that Microsoft Excel is the Swiss Army knife of, data tools. You said if you can use Excel and make do with it, why do you need to look at something else? But my question really is not about tools at the moment, Ashutosh. I want to lean in on the insights part of things. Both at AU and at Saril Sakya. Now, contrast this with your experience in the consumer world, where every data point, every behavior of ours is being mapped and used, created into algorithms, and they're drawing insights. So whether it's pushing content or Swiggy telling us it's you haven't ordered today and you need to, or Netflix telling us you need to watch this, there's so much of nudging that is coming our way. Now, I don't think I want to say that we need to extend that into the social impact world, but let's just stick to insights, right? And just understand for a moment. Uh, we talk about insights. We draw insights. Now, donors are going to draw insights from M&E reports, and they're going to make whatever they want out of it. Are organizations in their analytical journeys, have they reached, where are we in India in really using those insights? Because I still believe a lot of data is captured for reporting purposes, Ashutosh. And what do we really need to do around that? So let's not, because a lot of these organizations are very early in their data journeys, right? They're not really progressed. So how would you really kind of sort of demystify this and put it out there? One, uh, are organizations aware and recognize the kind of insights they can draw? Are they using them? And if they are, it's heartening to note they are, then we'd like to know how. But what do we really need to do? Because ultimately, all of us are here as to see how we can kind of change and support the at an ecosystem level. So that's my question to you straight up.
Firstly, Vijaya, thanks so much for having me here. Just a pleasure to be with Dr. Atul and Dr. Sarika. I just take 30 seconds with Edelgive. We had the opportunity to work with one of your beneficiaries, Dr. Atul, and with Dr. Sarika I had connected some time back, just when we started the social enterprise. Now to come to the question, Vijaya, what is it that we have to do at this point in time in the country, in the sector that we are in? I think the first thing that all of us need to do is to stop alienating ourselves as a social development domain to begin with. The fact that we have been looking at ourselves as a very different domain from the upstream or the corporate is the problem, is where the problem begins, because we have not been able to really see through and look at us as just another firm. And I'm just going to borrow the line Dr. Atul mentioned, that there is either money or data, and hopefully most social enterprises are not behind money, but they are behind impact. And that's exactly what we should be looking at with respect to data. And the reason why we have not been able to really harness that is because of this alienation. And the reason that happens is because in most organizations, and I'm sure Dr. Atul will also agree with me, the M&E domain or the department is always looked separately.
Yeah.
It's always a department which is there, which
yes.
is, let's do this. Versus in the corporate, everybody is driven by data. There are KRAs, there are OKRs, there are goals given to everybody based on data. Am I audible? Is it clear?
You are. You're just a little bit soft.
Okay. I hope it's better.
Much.
Yes. So we in the corporate, when we are driving insights, we are focusing on everything to do with data for every individual, every team. versus in the social enterprise, we are now really demarketing that to just the M&D teams. And that's where it happens. That's where the problem begins, because from there, every other department is given a mandate saying, hey, this is what we need to agree upon. This is what we need to track, because we want to report these to our donors. And if we are able to really draw from there and then build on that, saying, hey, we need to make sure that it's accessible to everybody, I think it will be a good journey for all of us. A lot of organizations have started doing that, but I think we have a long way to go. And with adoption of technology and data with the right mindsets, I think we will all be able to do that much better.
Okay, I'm just going to flip this back again to Atul before I then go to Dr. Sarika. So Atul, what I've heard from you and from Ashutosh is that yes, we shouldn't be looking at MEL data as as something very separate, as to fulfill one particular thing, but really integrate it more as a part of a very important sort of engine that delivers impact, right? So if we start looking at it, maybe treating it as, maybe it's also in the way we're looking at it, right? Because you're right, that there is fear when we're looking at the kind of data we need to collect. There's a certain amount of insecurity that comes up when we're told that we need to collect. It's also more difficult when you're sitting on the donor side and you're asking of it, because the immediate connotation is that it's a sort of like an audit. It's like sort of like a check on us and so on. And so therefore, how do you really manage your portfolio organizations in really, one thing is that they're going to give the data because they know disbursements are decisions are going to be based on that. But I also know that you have large, you have the large collaborators and you have the ECE program and getting all together. So what has been the approach in really telling people that, this is the kind of information that's required, this is how we use it? What has worked for you?
Yeah. I think first, I would, I can't agree more with Ashutosh when he said, it's M&E is looked at as a department. And I think I somewhere feel that's one of the biggest challenges that the organizations need to address. M&E has to be considered as aggregated and a segregated part of the entire game. They are aggregated when it comes to monitoring the program, and it comes, they are segregated part when you are looking at an evaluation of the program, because then you need a third person's view on that. But usually what happens is the M&E person is looked as Ashutosh rightly mentioned, is that devil who is going to come and put the fence around the program people, right? But that's not the case. I think it's important that they are made part of the program, right? And that's how we have tried to address this challenge at Edelgive. So when we look at the grant proposals, what we do is we invest in conversation dialogue with our partners, help them understand, giving them the first opportunity to say how they look at the program, how they want to monitor the program, what are their ideas of impact, what are their ideas of outcome, how they are going to achieve it, on what timeline, how they want to achieve it, and they feel it's feasible, it's pragmatically ambitious, and then we start taking that dialogue ahead from there. We always also try to put the reporting to minimum. That's one of the important thing that we have given put a lot of premium on, that we are not overburdening any of our organizations. We are going to collect only what we require to understand.
Yeah.
And that's what we achieve through the constant engagement with organization. So any of our grant would not have more than, I think if I take an average, will not have more than 10 to 12 data points to report at end of a quarter.
Correct. Okay.
And if you look at the entire set of indicators that the organization has to report in entire year, being applicable at different points, being outcomes or output indicator, the number would not go beyond 2022 max. And I'm saying this is a combination of some process, output, outcome, and impact indicator. So you are not really required to report on them all every time, right?
Right.
That's how
Right.
we keep it to minimum. Now, the other point that we very carefully look at is the organization's capacity.
Yeah.
You can't put something on the organization just because you need it, and the organization doesn't have capacity. Is not going to serve anybody's purpose. So it's important that we help organization doing it. And I take pride in saying that M&E capacity building is one of the important pieces that we work in, whatever form it may be. It may be in form of use of technology to right to the basic things of developing an M&E plan. It could be anything in between. But we provide them the support. If the organization doesn't have capacity to say to measure an outcome, right? Now, how can we use proxies in such cases?
Absolutely.
How can we help organization to really build that capacity? Connect them to a third-party agency. Let them understand, engage them in that process, and let them understand how it can be done. And then in the following years, you can have them also experience it, supporting that entire exercise to take it up themselves, right? Because it will not have happen overnight.
Yes.
Right. The capacities in this cannot be built overnight.
Absolutely.
Even you have data, the interpretation capacities cannot be built overnight. And
absolutely.
You require some time on that.
Very true. Very, very true. Dr. Sarika, when we were putting together our research for this session, one of the things that came up was that when you're looking to really build a sort of a data-driven culture in an organization, there's an equation. And interestingly, it said 50% people, 30% processes, and 20% technology. Because in our experience, often we think that it's technology, which is, maybe 50-60%, which I'm going to go back to Ashutosh. But I really want to understand at RA, and I think what caught my attention was really, what you've been speaking about in one of your articles about how you actually trained people down right at the last mile to really collect and generate that data and information, which also brings me back to Atul's point, right? Building people's capacities, this sort of culture that we talk about. Would love to hear what really worked and what was some of the sort of hurdles, if you want to call it, or the resistance that you might have faced and you would have to overcome. Over to you, Dr. Sarika.
Thank you so much, Vijaya. It's always pleasure to be on Social Lens events and talk about our experience, and happy to share the panel with elite people like Dr. Gandhi and Ashutosh. Wonderful being here. We have been very, very conscious about data. Data has driven all our decisions. We consider data to be the lifeline of organization. So, right from, as you mentioned, that right from the person on the field, the junior most level person to me who's kind of leading the organization, all of us use data, and every day, like literally our conversation begins with data. So I think it has to be a culture in the organization, and you have to build it as a culture in the organization, that you have to think data, talk data. And as Dr. Gandhi rightly said, that not too much data, you have to actually identify what data points you really want. I think that is very, very critical. The problem, I think, what I have seen in early stage organizations especially, is because the social problems are so intertwined that it becomes very easy, difficult sometimes to articulate exactly what data points you are trying to look for. So I think that clarity of understanding, clarity of thought is very important, and communicating that clarity of thought across the organization is very, very critical to use data very effectively. So I think that we have been very successfully able to do. And as you rightly said, that it's primarily about people, it's primarily about processes, and technology is just the enabler. And technology can become very overwhelming, especially for field staff and especially for smaller organizations, because the word is very, it means technology. Oh my God, how am I going to use technology? But technology can also be simple, small apps on your mobile phone, which can be used to capture data. Like, for example, we use a lots of apps. So I think what we kind of did very successfully was slowly slowly took one step at a time, built small capacity of our people, then took them to the next level, and then took them to the next level. So what typically is required is that clarity of thought, focus on data. And whenever we are actually designing a program, we are the first thing that I'm asking my people is, what are the problems you are seeing? What will tell you that there is change? How do you define change? And what that data point you need to capture to identify change? And so that is where we begin. So everybody comes out with their own versions of change, that
Mm.
okay, I will maybe track this, maybe I will track that. And then you have 20 odd data points that actually come up, and then we kind of discuss each one of them. Because see, what happens is that each data point also has multiple inferences. Like,
Correct.
I mean, simple. So then what do you need that data point? How do you infer? And so, for example, we work on water scarcity. And when I ask people that, how will you know that there is water scarcity? The first question is, I will ask the woman that how many kilometers she walks. Now,
Correct.
the problem is that you are asking a woman who probably has never gone to school, who probably has no sense of direction, who probably has
Distance.
very limited sense of distance, and who probably has had a very bad day because of the multiple social problems that she has faced during the day. How can you base your inferences based on the data that she's giving you? She may say 5 kilometers, which you may conclude that, oh my God, there's so much water scarcity in her village. But her limited understanding of distance, she may just say 1 kilometer, which may force you to conclude that there is no water problem in her village. So clearly, I think collecting data is a art and a science. And with experience, you pick up all these nuances as to what to ask, whom to ask, when to ask, importantly, when to ask, and how much to ask. So not too much can be asked. And honestly, technology can be a great enabler here. For example, today, this was what we used to do a couple of years ago, but today we don't ask these questions at all. When we want to understand the water scarcity, we use technology. We just do power walk in the village. We do GPS mapping of all the water structures. We use Google Maps to actually calculate the distance between the hamlet, and we just ask questions that, when does this well dry, when does this check dam dry? And based on that, and then we kind of create our own inferences. And then to validate the data, we do a focus group discussion. Simple. So that is, very minimal data collection, minimal interaction, and much superior data that you have at your hand. So I think it's a iterative process. You evolve slowly, and then slowly you get there. So people should not, I think organizations should not be scared of the word data, should not be scared of the word technology. And there are very simple ways to maneuver through this data and technology jungle and get there and do what you want.
It's all sounds very wonderful, and I love the storytelling, the way you put the whole water scarcity problem and this thing. But Dr. Sarika, again, I do want to understand the piece on resistance, because I think whether it is in the design of data, whether it's in the collection, and also the fact that a lot of the data is generated at ground, right? Not so not all of them understand, because in that data value chain, there's somebody who's collecting it, somebody who's analyzing it, it's being interpreted, somebody is working on a report, somebody's submitting it to the donors, or even internally program teams are debating. And really, how do you drive the understanding across all these different levels where people have different capabilities, they have their own mindsets, they have their own understanding, and they have their own insecurities, when they've been told that they have to do this. So just want to kind of understand it, because I don't think this is going to be unique to, this is going to be something which is going to be there across any organization. We use the word digital transformation, big words, but this is where it all begins. So just wanted to understand how you must have faced some bit of it, and how is it at Ra?
Absolutely. I mean, there is resistance, especially because you are expecting people who have never stepped out of their village, who probably have only used phones to call and call people. That's about it. They don't know any other usage. Maybe take photographs. That's about it. No other usage is known to them. And now you are expecting them to actually do reporting on the phones. And that's, kind of, but there has been resistance. But what we have always done, and we have believed in, I am a extremely firm believer in demonstration effect, and identifying early adopters. And honestly, you will find early adopters everywhere. whether it's any organization, whether it's beneficiary, you go to a village and you want to try out, you want to do some experimentation, you want to do some put in place some innovative practices, there'll be two early adopters, and that is enough. Even if I get one early adopter, I think my work is done, because then once that early adopter, so that's what we did, in our team, I found who's the early adopter. I could find two of them who were early adopters. I just transformed their thinking about data, their thinking about everything, addressed their insecurities and stuff like that, drilled into them why this is important, and your job is linked to the kind of quality of data that you collect. So, and then left it to them to kind of convert everybody else into this, and they made it sound so exciting, so interesting, because if I would have done that, probably the resistance would have been there. But when their own peers are doing it, there is less resistance, there is more adaptation, there is more learning, and they are much more comfortable learning from their peers than probably they would have been from me. Or if I would have taken somebody, spend a couple of ₹1,000 taking somebody from Mumbai to do this training program, the impact wouldn't have been as much. So I think all organizations should just look for that early adopter who can then who can do the tipping point for you.
Very, very interesting. Look for a data champion within the organization. Ashutosh, I want to kind of hear from you really on two things. One is, picking up from where Dr. Sarika left off, and again, coming back to this, do you think that across organizations are, the whole data driven culture, is it largely still leadership driven? Is it top down driven? That's one part of it. Then the next question, which is an automatic thing, is really then what sort of technology should we adopt? Because just right now, I think the amount of technology solutions that are coming and hitting us, every day there's something new. And one of the things we're just telling a lot of our nonprofit partners is, look where you are in your data journey before you start. I don't think we're opposed to the idea of technology. I think technology is great, but you first need to really see where you are. So two questions for you. One, to really drive a very inclusive sort of approach around data as a data-driven organization. Where do you see the resistance? Where do you see the opportunities? I like the idea which Dr. Sarika gave us. And then really on the big decision around technology, because I have questions then for Atul. And Susan, I'd just like to bring it up here that I will be asking you a couple of questions, please. I hope you've had your morning caffeine shot.
Yes, Vijaya. So
yes, Ashutosh.
The first question, which is with respect to the resistance of data, right? Absolutely in sync with Dr. Sarika's thoughts. What we also have seen is organizations which have worked bottom up as an approach to really adopt, whether it's data or technology, have succeeded faster than organizations which have tried to imbibe a top-down culture. In order to do that, I think it's extremely important for us to understand what is it that every stakeholder within the organization requires to succeed in his or her job. If we have been able to successfully quantify that and showcase as a pilot, then I think we have had a lot more early adopters than following a top-down approach,
okay,
be it for data or technology. And that's something that we have also tried to address with our work in the past, where we have seen organizations, and I'm going to segregate this, Vijaya, although I wouldn't want us to think that data and technology are two different pieces.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand. But the reason why I'm talking of the two is because we need to understand what kind of data will help every stakeholder succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, pick up what kind of technology do we need for the team to begin with, right? And we also have gone through this discussion that as Excel is the Swiss Army knife, WhatsApp is also technology, SMS is a technology. It depends on what we need at this point in time versus what we should be doing because somebody else is doing the same.
Right.
Yeah, and I think if we are able to do these two things, I think we will arrest a lot many more problems, resistance, and work towards being successful together as a team and as a domain.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you, Ashutosh. I'd just like to bring in, if the panel will indulge me, I'd just like to bring in somebody who's there in the audience and just ask Susan, who at Dalian and has a India portfolio as well. And before I move back to Atul. So Susan, welcome. And I'm sorry for the unexpected pulling you, spotlighting you in the panel, but it's always good to hear your perspective as well. You have an India portfolio, you know, you have a portfolio of organizations that Dalian supports, and we've been doing some work with you at Social Lens. You also work very closely with Edelgive, and you've been following the conversation very clearly. What are some of the observations that Dalian has made when we're talking about the driving towards sort of a data-driven approach for organizations, drawing insights? It allows for not just the donors, but for the organizations themselves to understand their programs better, which allows them to make changes and so on. So would just like to hear, your thoughts around that as well, Susan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to be very spontaneously, Jaya, because I haven't prepared at all for this. Oh, just a moment. But I mean, I was taking notes while I was listening, and maybe I would like to start a little bit about this resistance. I mean, it was discussed in the panel, but not actually as I look at it or as we experienced it. I think resistance, I mean, as Dalian, I must be maybe say that we are very open. Like Edelgive also, we tell that people also upfront, our partners, to help them build their own capacities for data-driven approaches, right? Because we are convinced we are a very small organization and we try to see where can we make a difference. And we are convinced that more and more the demands will go up by donors in terms of, that NGOs, NPOs choose data-driven approaches. And as you were saying, most of it are actually not used to that, not prepared, especially the smaller ones. And we try to help them build. Now even that we offer it, doing it, right? Vijaya, you have been involved in such efforts. Even though that we offer it to them, we tell them we're going to finance it. We experience a resistance. And I was wondering, why is that so? And I think we donors have a responsibility here too. I think, when you look at the for-profit situation, as it was mentioned, it's very clear to the for-profit organization that if we know the data, right, we're going to perform better. And we know that we perform better very easily because we're going to gain more money, right? I think for an NGO, it's a different situation. It is still like this. It means it's a measurement exercise. They're going to be measured against the expectations of a donor. Donor wants to see a certain impact. And there is always a risk if you start looking into data that somebody might be disappointed, right? That we might see that the efforts of the last 3 years have not led actually to the result we wanted to see. And I think that there is a big fear, at least I observed that in many of the organizations, that they do not want to be confronted with data. I think it starts with that. They are afraid of what am I going to see, right? Once I start digging into that. And that is a part of the capacities, etc. So what we see as Dalian, and that really takes time. 1-2 years, we have had concrete example where it took 1 or 2 years time of a relationship with a partner where we had to prove them, to give them the comfort level. We are not going to punish them. We want them to become better. And it is in their own, we give them a big opportunity here to become better. And then, of course, then they at least have the comfort level that Dalian will not walk away, but we will stay there, and we right. can accept disappointments, or we can accept, results that are not maybe that as it was on the paper when we started off.
Right.
That's the first thing. The second thing is a very human being, and I know it for myself. Many people do not like change.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of field workers that are out there, and they're just used to do something a certain way, and they have an authority, and it's a challenge. All of a sudden you have to confront yourself with the fact that maybe the way you have been doing something is maybe not the way it should be done now, and you have to change. So that's, for me, it's a second level of resistance. So once the organization has the comfort level from the donor, they have to convince their own people that there is there is nothing bad in changing. There is nothing
Yes,
bad in
absolutely.
improving, and the world has changed. Many of these organizations are out there 30, 40 years. They have done great work, but the world is changing. The demands of the donors are changing. The communities they have been working are changing. So maybe it's time to change something, and that is nothing bad. Doesn't mean that you have not done good work. It's just that's life. So that's a bit spontaneously what I was saying. And then maybe something which stuck with me, which I would very much subscribe, is Atul was saying less is more. We should not, very often we see that NGOs really like to build a lot of data, very complex log frames.
Yes.
Much easier to actually be simple, modest, and not trying to change everything. Try to have a robust theory of change with few elements and try to do that well. And also the notion somebody mentioned that how do we collect the data is at least as important as what data we collect. And that is also something we learned when we went into the field with experts, and they told us, listen, that's all nice, these data, but the way they have been collected is actually not helping us at all. So I think, sorry. So that's a bit my observations.
Thank you so much, Susan. Atul, I'm just circling back to you now. We spoke about less is more. So a couple of questions out here. I think one is anything that you want to introduce, by way of a system or by way of a sort of whatever it's going to cost. It is going to cost. Everything has an attached cost, right? And are increasingly donors looking to say that, just like compliance cost has gone up today, right? Nonprofits in India, we steadily saw the compliance cost go up. Similarly, whether we want to call it M&E or we want to call it, I don't know, whatever the other word to give, but this somewhere needs to get embedded into this thing. It cannot be viewed separately as outside of it. What are donors thinking? Are they willing to look at M&E cost, or part of cost allocation of program into M&E as well? And then whether they're going to use Google Sheets, they're going to use SMS, they're going to use a special technology tool, or they're going to just have two more data people sitting there who are working on it. I don't know, but are firstly donors willing to kind of explore those? How is the thoughts around that?
I think absolutely donors are willing to support. If you look at bigger organizations, they already also have guidelines in terms of how much of total budget should be allocated to M&E.
Mm-hmm.
Some say 3%, 5%, 7%. The amounts would change, but yes, donors are willing to support it.
Okay.
It is also important that the organizations also demand for it, right? You cannot have, you can't serve anyone if you don't have grains. Now to generate that, you will need to buy it, generate it, right?
Absolutely.
So it's important that organizations also demand it, right? The data cannot just be generated, maintained, analyzed, and impact being shared with the donors if it is not supported adequately. Many of the organizations in our experience, we have seen that don't want to adopt technology because they are not sure if today this funder is supporting it, the other funder will support it or not. They are concerned about recurring costs, right? And I'm very happy that the donors are also coming up with willingly to support all these initiatives, be it adoption of technology, setting up proper M&A system. Donors are willing to support it, not only in terms of money but also in terms of capacity building.
Right.
Right, as Susan also just mentioned about it, Dalia and Edelgave, and we also know organizations who work, and I'm sure you know many more such organizations who are not only willing to support it financially as part of budgets, but also provide over and above support to organization to build their capacity. So I think the world is opening up for that, and donors are, I think more and more donors, if not all, are thinking more and more number of donors have to think about it, because unless and until they extend the support towards this, it cannot be strengthened. And as they say, a country is poor because it's poor. A data organization will remain data poor because it is data poor. It's
true,
right?
Absolutely. Ashutosh, I'm just going to kind of put this question a little bit different. It's come from the audience. When an organization is, let us say a program is at a pilot, right? And then from pilot, it has to really, there's a proof of concept, they've got the pilot done. But honestly, a pilot, the sample, the data, the richness of data which you get in, is probably is a lot more extensive because of the kind of sample, because it is a pilot. But when you take that to at scale and you suddenly go from here, from point A, you to go to point, say, X, right? There's a leap that organizations really have to make. And what are the 2-3 top considerations that organizations need to bear in mind? Let's say when you're going from, say, a pilot of 5 schools and you're going to take this to 200 schools.
Sure, Vijay. In fact, I'll just go back to one of my previous jobs where I was working, piloting rural kindergarten education and scaling it across Karnataka and Maharashtra. I think one of the top factors to consider for a pilot to be scaled is the design of the program. And the design of the program is independent of what data you have collected and what technology you have used.
Okay.
They are incongruous, and we have to remember that at no point in time can we go ahead scaling just because our proof of concept has been verified. If the POC has taken into consideration the design for scale, and if we have collected enough metrics, and believe me that most organizations do not collect a lot of metrics when they are working on a pilot, because I'm not saying they're myopic, but they just want to figure out if the top 5 or 6 metrics are at this point in time being catered to.
Okay.
It's a great vision to have. But the moment we start basing our scale on that premise, it will fall apart, because there are a lot many more factors like Atul mentioned. It's about funding, it's about resource management, it's about understanding which kind of what inputs we need for each geography that we are getting into. Even within the same state, different districts have different ideas that we need to cater to and different goals. So that's number one is design. The second thing is, of course, technology. At no point in time can we scale without the use of technology. Unfortunately, the fear of technology, which was during the Industrial Revolution, is now being taken over by AI. Everybody thinks that our jobs will be taken over by AI. They are not. Technology has not taken away anybody's jobs. And all we have to do, just like we are trying to build a bottom-up approach in the organization for data, we should also do the same thing for technology as well. If you're able to showcase to everybody saying, hey, you just have to work 6 hours a day, and then 2 hours you can just upskill yourself and work on something else, and your life will become better using technology, everybody will start becoming early adopters.
Okay.
It's only through them that we'll be able to figure out if there is a challenge when we take it to scale.
Right.
Yeah. So these
Understood.
are the important factors which I think are very, very critical for scaling.
Thank you very much for that, Ashutosh. Atul, I'm just coming back to you we spoke about the rationalization of metrics. Ashutosh also said that, at pilots, you really need to look at as many metrics as you want. And probably then as you move into program, further maturity and scale, you'll start looking at which are the ones you want to keep and which are the ones you want to shed. I don't think there's no sort of reporting sort of standards and frameworks which have just come about just yet. I know that the Social Stock Exchange has put together some sort of a measurement framework, but currently, do you see that in the future? Do you expect that there'll be some amount of standardization? Because I also believe that the programs are nuanced and there are certain elements which go into each program as an outcome or as an impact. So do you envision that there would be standardized kind of reporting frameworks emerging in the near future?
I think with social stock exchange, that might happen. But I think it will be a very big struggle for organizations who are already struggling to, put in place mechanisms for measurement and have a lot of challenges around M&E to deal with, to reach to that level. I think it will be very, very difficult for for organization to match with it.
Okay.
Because I don't also there is another challenge which I see with the standardization is there are a lot of organizations dealing with a lot of issues in lot of approaches.
Yeah.
What exactly we are trying to standardize here, right? Are we talking about standardizing a reporting template? Are we trying to standardize how it should be measured?
Yeah.
Right? Are we trying to standardize some definitions for something? Right? I think it will be very important that it gets done in an inclusive manner, right? Because there are organizations, for example, if you say that organizations working on maternal child health should look at the child mortality rates, neonatal mortality, or early neonatal mortality rates as one of the indicators. Now, what if an organization is working in a small pocket, right? Because that intervention is required there and they are working there and serving to only probably 10,000 population. How are you supposed to really measure that? Because in case of that, calculating that particular indicator, you need 1,000 births as a denominator.
Yeah.
1,000 live births. How will you be able to standardize it? So should that organization not be measuring it, then is that organization going to lose onto it? So I think that standardization will require a lot of inclusive conversation to arrive at, because I think the idea will also be how we can then scale up what interventions we see.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The standardization will also help on that. But as I absolutely agree with how Ashutosh said is about program design.
Yeah.
I think many pilots look at what I want to scale up, and not as what will work at scale. I think the program design has to think about it, whether what I'm trying to do will work out at scale or not, because it's not only taking that one particular process to entire entire state, entire district, right? It's important that it works at scale, right?
Absolutely.
And the
Absolutely.
standardization, when we talk about in terms of measurement indicator, I still feel we have a long way to go to really arrive at that stage. It's not going to be the way markets look at P&L and other indices. It's not going to be that simple. We'll have to factor in everyone. Otherwise, what probably we will end up with is the bigger organizations would go further bigger because they have put in those mechanisms. They have that much of geography to measure those standard indicators, but others are losing out. I think that's not what we want here.
Before I just go back to Dr. Sarika, it's very interesting, Atul, because I think one of the things also about pilots, right, when we do, and one of the emerging areas in measurement is also behavior change measurement, which is now becoming fundamental to any sort of program you run. Now, the behavior change measurement and whatever you've done in a pilot is not necessarily going to have the same kind of behavior change when you take the program to scale. Because obviously at scale, then you're bringing in, you're layering in further the mindset differentiation, which is there in across different communities. So, and I haven't even opened up that topic today for the conversation today. I do know that there's a lab planned around it. So for all those behavioral scientists out there, where behavior change measurement has now become like sort of the most exciting area to be in, we realized that, again, I do see even behavior change measurement outcomes having a play when you're looking at something that you could measure as a good, favorable outcome in your pilot and what happens at scale. So coming back to you, Dr. Sarika, where do you see Ra going forward now from this? You've got onto your data journey, and we've heard how far you've come here. What do you see really moving forward? We're also in a world where we are also adapting to new working situations, new working styles, the way programs are being implemented. And I'm definitely going to pose this question to my other panelists as well, to both Ashutosh and Atul. Uh, are we going to be moving towards a, a greater reliance on data as far as organizations, as far as programs, and as far as impact comes? Because that would then have a lot of considerations for a lot of us on everything to do with people, processes, and systems. Dr. Sarika.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think last 2 years have been 1.5 year have been very remarkable for us, because while we were always on the data journey, I think we consolidated our data journey and made it more robust and kind of scaled it up since COVID happened, because we quickly realized that this is here to stay and this is going to make us more data dependent. And this clearly means that we have to build capacity and empower our field staff to do a lot of things for us, which otherwise we were doing. So clearly one of the important things was the MND part, monitoring and evaluation. I am not going to go there, or my team from Mumbai is not going to be able to visit very regularly on the field. So it is the responsibility will rest with my field staff. So it becomes very important to empower them and build their capacity to become the mouth, ear, face, everything of the organization, I mean, which otherwise I was doing, that role. So then when we realized that, we quickly identified that what are the tools that are required to build their capacity on, so that they can not only do the task of collecting data, performing activities, implementing projects, but also comparing the data and actually doing the evaluation and monitoring work, especially the evaluation work, that whatever we have done, what has it led to and stuff like that. So we have been able to kind of go on that journey, and I think going forward I would definitely like to keep it at that, and not only that but also scale it up big time, so that my field staff only tells me that change has happened or change has not happened, or what we wanted to achieve has not happened, or what we wanted to achieve has happened much earlier than we thought. So kind of empower them much more than what we are, because ultimately, I mean, I don't know, third wave, fourth wave. So it is, and I think once we have come this far, I don't want to go back and take everything in my own hands again. So I think we are heading there. And not only that, but another advantage was that there are other technology platforms which we going forward implemented, and my field staff, it became very easy for me to implement, because they got onto that journey very fast. Like for example, we now have a ERP system where we report every day, and they are updating whatever they are doing daily, which otherwise used to happen on WhatsApp, is now happening on the ERP system. So I think, and honestly, my field staff, they are all indigenous tribal people. Many of them have barely studied till class 10. They are not like graduates from high colleges, high worth colleges or stuff like that. And if we can do it, I think there is enormous hope for a lot of grassroots level organizations to implement technology, to use data more effectively, to implement ERP systems, to empower your field staff to actually do the M&D on behalf of you and do it properly and correctly. For example, in the initial stages, we have done multiple things to validate the data that came out, especially on evaluation data. So we had put in place multiple checks and mechanisms to validate whether the data coming out is correct, right, accurate, how accurate, etc., etc. And honestly, now I am much more confident that we are there. So that is to answer your first question. I think I've also answered kind of your second question that, so going forward, I would like to consolidate this and take it, scale this up so that we have the field staff who's implementing the data actually talks about monitoring and does the evaluation themselves.
Well, thank you very much for that response, Dr. Sarika. Ashutosh, so we've all agreed that COVID is now moved from being a pandemic to an endemic. And given that, what are your parting words for all of us as far as organizations go? Are we moving towards a new, a more enhanced era of data generation and usage by organizations?
Well, Vijaya, firstly, I wish this all happened without the pandemic much earlier.
Yeah.
Now that the pandemic has stuck and we want to look at silver lining, yes, I think we are all moving there. I just hope that we had done this earlier. It's a good beginning for all of us. It is a change, like Susan also mentioned. It's a challenge, but I think just focusing on the actions, focusing on the intent, and just sticking by the design, I think we will just be able to do a lot better than what we all have been doing collectively. And data and technology are always to be looked as enablers, and which go hand in hand with every department.
Thank you for that, Ashutosh. Atul, are we moving? Do you envisage a future where we are moving away from the field visits and the joys, the highs and the lows, which went every time we went visiting ground zero to see what's happening, and all of us are now looking at electronic information at our laptops to see and understand. I do feel sad about that, because there was so much joy we drew every time we visited ground zero to see what was happening. But really, I mean, can all of us place the reliance on data, which is increasingly going to become the most foremost ways in which we're going to be looking at organizations and programs and impact?
I think, Vijay, this is like saying, if I have an edtech available, can it replace teacher? Certainly not.
Yes.
So I am saying that, certainly you can't, say that the data will replace the field experience that you will be able to draw and learn a lot from there. Right, data will give you insights, right?
Yeah.
But as we always say, it's not only the quantitative data doesn't always is able to bring out the entire truth. It also needs to be supplemented with some qualitative observations as well. I think that's going to be very important. What I also feel is that the pandemic has expedited this movement of adoption of technology and setting your measurements right.
Absolutely.
Because at this point of time, if you want to go out and seek funding, talk about what you have been doing, you don't have any other means.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think it has expedited, and I, in a way, as Ashutosh also said, I also wish that it would have had it had happened without the pandemic. But yes, at least it has started. But it will certainly not replace the field experiences for sure. I also feel that the importance of data is also because with pandemic and with resources being diverted in to emergency requirements, there is also going to be a tough fight for those resources. It's not that the resources are plenty and after the emergency goes away it will be all available. The resources are going to be always scared, most importantly the money resource. And I
Absolutely.
think everyone is looking at optimizing the achievements out of that resource. So the data is definitely going to be, a need of the hour, and it's going to not lose its importance in time to come.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank the wonderful panel. I think it's been a fabulous discussion. We almost went into it was the right balance of the technical conversations, plus really, from a very, very sort of a human-centric perspective. I think Dr. Sarika, Ashutosh, Atul, thank you for bringing this together. I know there'll be more conversations that are going to continue as part of the Good Data Collective. For those of you who've seen, who want to be part of the Good Data Collective, write into us and let's explore how we can really take this mission forward. But for now, thank you all for joining in. Follow us on social media, look out for the virtual learning labs. And for all of you who've joined in, including Susan, all the way from Switzerland, thank you very much. Wish you all a lovely evening and the rest of the day. Thank you very much for being part of this today.
Thanks, Vijaya.
Sarika.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Sarika.
Thank you so much, everyone.